Okay. I'm Laura Cirimina. I'm from the University of Palermo, and I'm one of the four All Marine Board Young Ambassador. The board essentially is a think tank in marine science policy that provides a platform to advance marine research and to try to huge the gap between scientists and policy makers. And among all the activities that the board is running, there is this series of webinars called the ECOP Wednesday. That is a series of webinars set for early career researcher to show their work and to meet other researchers with a different background. Here we have some housekeeping rules for attending the webinar. So please make sure that your name is correctly entered. Keep your microphone muted unless the final discussion. And raise your hand if you have any question, or you can also use the chat. Today we have as speaker Ginevra Capurso from the CNR Italy, with the topic evidence-based policymaking in marine governance, the role of science policy society interface. So Ginevra, the floor is yours. Take your time for your presentation.
Thank you very much, Laura. And thank you again for having me today. I will try to share the slides. Share. And then full screen. Opla. Is it working?
Yes, now yes.
Okay, perfect. So as I was saying, thank you again, both for the introduction and for the opportunity of giving this presentation today. Again, my name is Ginevra Capurso. As Laura anticipated, I am working at the National Research Council of Italy, specifically the Institute for Marine Sciences, based in Venice. And the presentation I'd like to give today is based on the work, part of the work we have been carrying out in the project CrossGov that focused on coherent and cross-compliant ocean governance for the reaching of certain EU Green Deal objective for our seas. And the focus is specifically on evidence-based policymaking in marine governance and the role that SPSI, so Science Policy Society Interfaces, play in this. And this was the outcome of the all consortium of the project. So a few more words on the CrossGov project. This was a 3 years horizon that just ended. It ran from 2022 till August 2025, so 3 days ago. And the aim was to advance knowledge on how coherence and cross-compliance of marine policies could help us in reach three objectives under the European Green Deal: the protection of marine ecosystems and biodiversity, zero pollution, and nature-based climate adaptation and mitigation. The geographical focus of the project was around 3 marine regions: the Mediterranean, the Baltic Sea, and the North Sea. And as we focus both on the policy formulation and the policy implementation, for the policy implementation side, we use as a methodology a series of case studies, some of which you can see in the map. But we delve a bit more in the topic of today by talking about evidence-informed policymaking. Why is it so important and so critical to analyze it? Because we are facing an area of complex policy challenges that makes it fundamental to make the best use of scientific knowledge And this is not only needed response to this complexity for the management of wicked problems such as climate change, global pandemics, artificial intelligence, but also is needed to boost public trust in governance, to help explain public choices and policies to the public, and ultimately to improve their implementation. And what does SPS has to do with this? SPSIs can be defined as the social processes that encompass relations between scientists and all the other actors in the policy process, and that allows for this exchanging, co-growth, co-evolution, and construction of knowledge with the ultimate aim of enriching decision-making. So when they are performing, when they are optimal, they can help us in reducing those obstacles that come with the complexities of what the policies aim to manage. So, for example, the lack of knowledge, the uncertainty, the ambiguity. And this is why in our project, we developed a specific methodology to precisely analyze how efficient and effective SPSIs can contribute to sound policymaking and decision-making. Of course, in the project, our focus was on how to enhance coherence and cross-compliance towards the region of the objective of the EU Green Deal. And we did so by creating these methodologies made of 4 steps that we wanted to apply, as I anticipated, both at the policy formulation stage of the policy cycle, so at the EU level, directive level, and then at the policy implementation stage of the policy cycle through the case studies I mentioned before. To then analyze and see what is working and what is not working. Basically, what were the enabling factors of an efficient and effective performance of SPSIs, and what were the barriers, the obstacles, what was not working and that we could improve. The aim was then to formulate a series of recommendations that we collected in the form of a blueprint, but we will come to this in later in the presentation. What I would like to do now is to go a bit briefly through the steps of the methodology to give an overview of what we are talking about, and then give you an idea of what we encountered in our analysis, so the results we observed. So we said 4 steps of operational procedure, and these are the 4 steps. We start with an inception phase in which the user of the methodology can define the scope of the analysis he or she wants to carry out from the geographical point of view, the policy point of view, the time. Step 2, we define the science policy society system, and we will come to the definition in a few slides. Step 3, we characterize the building blocks of SPSI, and with building blocks, we refer to the main conceptual elements that we believed were important to assess the performance of the science to policy to society interfaces. So the main, the core of the interface. So what we want to see as maybe well-performing or bad performing, so that we could improve. And finally, step 4, by making a synthesis of what comes out of step 2 and 3, we can answer the research questions. So very briefly, in the inception phase, again, we define the scope. So we set the scene for the geographical scope if we want to focus on case studies or on a regional C or something else. We select the policies under analysis and the stage of the policy cycle. So if we want to focus only on the design and formulation, or only on the implementation, evaluation and adaptation, or all of them together. The time frame, so for example, the second cycle of the Marine Strategy Framework Directive or something else. The main research questions, And maybe most importantly, the main sources of information. So if we want to focus only on scientific articles, directives, policy documents, so desk research, or if we want to integrate also with some hands-on experience, so to integrate also the perspective of key stakeholders, being these researchers, policymakers, scientists, and so on and so forth. Step 2. The definition of this SPS system we just mentioned. This is defined as the set of actors, including the civil society, and their connections through which scientific knowledge is acquired, synthesized, translated, presented for use, and applied in the policymaking process. So basically, who is involved in the whole process, and what are the connections among the actors involved. And it can look something like this, where we can find evidence generators and evidence users. So starting from the evidence generators, we can think of academia, universities, research centers. Then you can see here on the left, evidence pumps. These are the actors that are responsible to push the knowledge from the evidence generators to the evidence user. This can be, again, also a research center in this role of boundary organizations or environmental agencies. Again, any boundary organization that can play this in-between role. And then evidence users. So the actors responsible for all the stages of the policy cycle, from the design and formulation of the policy to its implementation, to its evaluation and adaptation. So basically, policymakers at the EU level, the various DGs, and at the national level, the various ministries, at the subnational, the regional administrations, so on and so forth. And then we can find also some hybrid actors that are in between green and yellow. We can think of, for example, all the foundations, the NGOs, the associations representing the civil society, but also the small medium enterprises, the trade unions, the sector representative. We can find representing the business sectors. So this, of course, set the scene a bit on who is responsible for what and what are the connections between the various actors. And then we pass on by characterizing the building blocks we mentioned before. And this can be seen as the inputs, methods, and outputs of the system we have just described. So the outputs, what's coming out of the system, basically the knowledge, the data gathered, collected under the policies and to inform the policies, and the assessments carried out in the policies and of the policies. The methods, so how is this knowledge and data acquired and shared? What are the models for this knowledge transfer? And what is the role of the platforms involved? And the inputs. So here we are referring to the competencies of the actors involved, both on the science side, the researchers, and on the policy side, the policymakers, and the funding and resources available. And so these are the 6 main core elements we believe are important to assess in analyzing the efficiency and effectiveness of SPS interfaces. And for each of these, we defined key attributes and guiding questions to assess their efficiency. So, for example, we want to see how data and knowledge are made available and used in the process to inform the policymaking process. How assessment assemble the best knowledge available in a form that is useful for the decision-making process. What are the models of scientific policy advice available and the mechanisms for the transfer of the knowledge? So, for example, here we can differentiate among models that are linear, in which science and policy are on two separate parallel streams, or we can think of collaborative models in which science and policies are co-producing the policies. And how is this model affecting the effectiveness of the decision-making process? The role of the platforms. Here we can think of panels of experts, communities of practice, networks, outreach associations, web platforms, and similar. And we want to see their role in implementing and contributing to these knowledge transfer mechanisms. Again, how competence frameworks, so the skills and attitudes of all the actors involved, and related capacity building activities influence the SPS process and the decision-making process. So if, for example, the competence are adequate, are interdisciplinary. And ultimately, how funding and availability of resources affect the SPS dimensions. So here we are referring to both money and human resources. Finally, step 4. Based on everything we have learned, analyzing step 2, so the system, the actors and their connections, and step 3, by characterizing all these building blocks and their characteristics, we are then able to answer the research questions. So to understand what type of science, knowledge, and interaction we need for coherent and cross-compliance formulation and implementation of the policies. What is the knowledge that is currently used and provided? So what is the practice that we encounter now? What is the role that science plays in the policymaking and decision-making processes? And how is this knowledge contributing to the horizontal and vertical coherence and cross-compliance of policies? Of course, these are our guiding research questions, but they can be adapted on the basis on the analysis that the user of the methodology want to carry out. So this was the overview of the methodology. How did we apply it? As I said, we focus both on the formulation and on the implementation, and the implementation, policy implementation bit, we carried out research based on a series of case studies in the 3 marine regions we mentioned before. And each of the case studies selected their area of interest, of course, but also the policies of interest, the time frame, the stakeholders, and how to engage with them. Most of the case studies focused on many of the directives that we focused on in the project. So basically the Water Framework Directive, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, and the Marine Spatial Planning Directive. What they differed more in was the focus of the sector. So, for example, the sectoral policies. So, for example, the Northern Adriatic Sea focused more on fisheries, while the Baltic Sea focused on agriculture, as well as the Oslo Fjord, and so on and so forth. This was just to give an idea. And this is the real schematic overview of how we applied the methodology. So again, at both formulation and implementation part of the policy cycle, combined with the literature review. And this allowed us to identify a series of needs. So as I was saying before, we identified what was working and performing well, and what could benefit from an improvement. So a series of identified needs that led us to the definition of a series of recommended actions to tackle these needs. And the recommended actions were divided into 2 main sets. The first one, made of 14, I think, recommendations, is of relevance in general for EGD-related marine policies, so as a more broad overview, while some, and I think these are 18, are more tailored and specific for specific policies and sectors. And yeah, this was the outcome of a co-development process with stakeholders that were involved in the case studies and in the analysis of the policy formulation stage in the form of interviews. And then with experts at the EU level in the form of focus groups, because we really wanted to hear from them if our needs were matching with their experience and their hands-on experience. And this helped us in integrating, better defining, and validating our recommendations to the formulation of the blueprint. So now I would like to give a couple of examples of everything that maybe sounds a bit not too concrete for the moment. But these are the needs, some of the needs we encountered in our analysis. So what could benefit from an improvement, maybe? Divided by the building blocks we have seen before. So concerning data and knowledge, the importance of having data and knowledge that are timely available and accessible across the policies. The importance of acknowledging knowledge gaps if present. The importance of considering the intricacies and interlinkages among policies, sectors, and different disciplines. The importance of having assessments that are transparent, relevant, legitimate, and credible, and that recognize all the knowledge providers that should and needs to be involved in the process. And again, the integration of the various disciplines, combined with the inclusion of scenarios that are a useful tool for policy and decision making. Concerning the models, we found important to slowly switch from the linear model in which science and policies are two separate streams to collaborative form of models where science and policy can co-produce the policies. The importance of reinforced SPS governance to make it less fragmented, more stable. The importance of promoting and reinforces the SPSI platforms and the boundary organization in the role of knowledge translation, but also in the role of boosting and enhancing cross-sectoral collaboration. As for the competencies, the importance of boosting and ensuring the adequacy of the competencies of the actors involved, both on the inter and transdisciplinary point of view, and to have capacity building initiatives that are inclusive and available. And as for funding and resources, the importance of having a mixed set of drivers for funding, for it to be, of course, adequate and continuous, and the importance of having the needed human resources available. So based on these needs, we were able to think of and formulate a series of recommended actions that I would like to give, of which I would like to give a few examples, starting with the set of recommendations that we thought could be useful in general for all EGD related marine policies. So this idea of preparing a guideline to analyze, evaluate, and improve SPS governance. And maybe this methodology could be a starting point. To do what? To continuously promote, as part of the policy cycle, this continuous analysis of the SPS system to efficiently acknowledge its weaknesses and act upon them. Then, to support the development of knowledge practices across policies, both at the national and at the EU level. We already have good examples of knowledge catalog, for example, EMODNet at the EU level. But of course, they could benefit from additions in terms of cross policy dimensions. And also it's not something that is present at the national level all the time. So it's something that's, of course, it could help the policymaking and decision-making process in a coherent way across the policies. And then support and promote the SPSI platforms and the research funder organization, especially in the role of creating an environment in which actors can engage in cross-sectoral and cross-policy discussions. Then, focusing on the recommendations relevant for specific policies, as I mentioned, these were the main directives that we focused on in the project. So the Water Framework Directive, the Marine Strategy Framework Directive, and the Marine Spatial Planning one. Concerning the three of them together, we are suggesting to develop and support an interconnected repository across land and sea. So from source to sea, starting from knowledge catalogs of metadata. Again, there are some projects that are working on this, but it remains very difficult because each directive has its own life cycle, has its own objectives, so indicators, criteria, descriptors that are tailored to this objective, and its own monitoring program. So it's not easy. Then MSFD and MSP. To improve and complete the threshold methods and values for the assessment of good environmental status under MSFD, and to use directly these criteria and values as key elements and targets to have an ecosystem-based approach in MSP. And concerning solely MSP, to develop methods to improve quantitative socioeconomic analysis, because sometimes MSP is seen more as a zoning instrument, but it's covering all the sectors of the blue economy. So it's also very much important to conduct socioeconomic and qualitative analysis as well. Concerning the sectors, these are the three sectors we mainly focused on in the project: offshore wind energy, agriculture, and fisheries. Concerning agriculture and water protection, we are suggesting to strengthen, support, and disseminate advisory services for farmers on water protection policies, to boost their trust in the policy makers, and to make them aware also on the benefits that their sector can have on the long term while implementing water protection measures. As for fisheries, to improve the uptake of knowledge by small-scale and recreational fishers, that is still a big knowledge gap in the assessment on the sector, and complement with enhanced data collection. And as regarding of offshore wind energy, improve the operationalization of methods and tools for cumulative impact assessment, because a big knowledge gap we are still facing in the sector is the real impact that wind turbines, their installment, but also during their activities, have on the marine ecosystems. So this is something we thought it could be important to underline. And then to broaden a bit the everything I've been saying and connect it to the ongoing policy discussion, these points of driving the attention on the science to policy interface and science to policy nexus, and the importance that knowledge and governance have been attracting, is something that is also happening at the in policy discussion at the European level and at the global level. Two examples I thought of giving were the launch of the Ocean Pact this summer by the European Commission this June. What does the Ocean Pact do? It puts knowledge and governance among its foundational pillars, and it aims at providing this key instrument, one of which is the International Platform for Ocean Sustainability, that is exactly aiming at reinforcing this science policy nexus in the marine field, building the overarching framework with the Ocean Act, providing coordination with the board, and monitoring the progress with this Ocean Pact dashboard. So these instruments provide a clear framework within which SPSI principles and tools could be embedded systematically. And same at the global level. So we have the example of the One Ocean Science Congress and the UNOC, again, happened this June in Nice with the policy brief, the manifesto, that are putting emphasis on the importance of integrating scientific, indigenous, and local knowledge, that are calling for stronger investment in research and observation infrastructures, that advocate for stronger SPSI to guide decision-making at all levels. And now I just have a couple of final slides. The first one is where you can find all the information back. The answer is easy on our website. Even if as I said, the project has just ended, the website will be still available for the next 5 years. And the main deliverables and sources I've been extracting information from are the methodology for conducting the SPS analysis, so deliverable 1.4, and then the recommendations, and in general, the process of conducting the analysis can be found in the blueprint, deliverables 1.3. And these contents are also available in the massive open online course developed in the project. And I thought this could be maybe of interest because it's a MOOC that is covering all the contents of the project. So from the methodologies we have developed, how did we apply it, the lesson learned from the case studies, all our roadmaps, recommendations. So maybe is of interest. And finally, yes, the latest deliverable, the policy brief on SPS. And of course, if you find anything relevant, useful, applicable in your research, or if you have some comments, doubts, we are here, so we would be happy to get in touch. And the very last slide, just before concluding, to maybe to have an idea of the practical world of SPSI, and what are some of the European and international institutions and platforms. The list could be 100 bullet points long, but yeah, these were the ones I thought of, the examples I thought of giving. The GRC, the Joint Research Center of the European Commission, basically the in-house science provider of the European Commission. They offer traineeship, temporary positions, yeah, and they have a project on SPS. ICES, the International Council for the Exploration of the Sea, is a leading provider of scientific advice on marine ecosystems and fisheries, and they engage with experts through committees and working groups. So you might want to check them out if something resonates with your experiences, with your interests. And then the EEA, the European Environment Agency, they produce indicators, assessment, knowledge services for European policies. More broadly, the Mission Ocean and Waters and related projects, the Horizon Europe projects, the MFAF projects. So this service of interdisciplinary research and innovation initiatives where there are many projects with strong science to policy components, maybe useful to find some collaborations. Then IPOS, the one I just mentioned, emerging under the Ocean Pact, this international platform for ocean sustainability. And then IPBES, the Intergovernmental Science Policy Platform on Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. This is a UN body, yeah, producing assessment at the global and regional level, and they could offer fellowship to early careers. And with this, I hope I was not too long, and I thank you very much. This is my contact. And maybe I can stop sharing at this point.
Yes, of
Okay.
course.